on in. Good to see you all. Thanks so much for being with us on this Friday Eve. It is Max Kellerman, Molly Karam here in Bristol. How are we doing, Max?
Was Friday Eve trending today?
It was trending. I know. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. My contribution to society. Stephen A. from L.A. I know he must be in a good mood. How you feeling?
What's going on, y'all? How you doing? Yes, I am in a very, very good mood. How y'all doing?
Good.
How you doing?
Get some sun for me, would you?
I'll do my best.
All right.
I'll do my best.
You guys ready to do this?
Always.
Yes.
All right, we got a lot coming up. The multi-talented T.I. Tip will join the show to talk about his Falcons in the Super Bowl. He's got to be hyped. Does he see Matt Ryan getting the best of Brady? Find out that in just a bit. But we are starting with the trade rumors that have been swirling around the association. So recently, the Knicks approached the Cavaliers to gauge their interest in swapping all-star forwards Carmelo Anthony for Kevin Love, but Cleveland said no thank you. The Knicks' thinking is that they would have to get rid of Anthony. They have to discuss waiving his no-trade clause, and Cleveland had shown no interest in the deal. Here's Melo and LeBron on the trade that wasn't.
I really don't have a reaction to it. I mean, until management come to me and say something, then it's not something I can look forward to or feed into at this point. So I really don't have a reaction to it.
I have no reaction. We got 14 guys in here. We need to be ready every night. What we got in here, we got to play. Can't play fantasy basketball. We got who we got, and we got to go out and play.
So the Cavs pass on Melo. Stephen A., do you think this was a wise move?
I don't think it was a wise move on their part, and I want to make sure that I'm clear. I'm not casting any aspersions on Kevin Love whatsoever. He's averaging 20 and 11 on 43% shooting. He's been effective for the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's a third wheel on their squad. I think he'd be better served as at least a second wheel personally, which he obviously can't be in Cleveland with LeBron James and Kyrie Irving there. I just think it's one of those situations where you highlight and you focus in on what you're pursuing. And if you are in pursuit of a championship, then you have to pay attention to who your biggest nemesis potentially may be. And the biggest nemesis, obviously, is the Golden State Warriors. Now, if the Golden State Warriors still had Andrew Bogut and Harrison Barnes as opposed to Kevin Durant, then you might not have the need to do such things. But because they have Kevin Durant to couple with Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, two of the greatest shooters in the world, along with Draymond Green, you have to be ready to adapt and to make the necessary adjustments. And I don't think the Cleveland Cavaliers, as presently constructed, can beat that Golden State Warriors team that we're seeing. You have to have somebody who can create their own shot when things break down, not literally have to rely upon a LeBron James or Kevin or Kyrie Irving to do that for them. And that's what I see when I think about Kevin Love. Kevin Love can ball. He is no scrub. He's a good dude. All of those things come into consideration. But if you're LeBron James, who's been to 6 straight NBA Finals, you know what it takes to get there. And in the end, without saying so directly, what you're essentially saying is, as presently constructed, we are not good enough. We need to make an adjustment. Certainly, you need a backup point guard. So that doesn't, Carmelo's potential arrival doesn't erase that need. But in the end, I think if you have an opportunity to get a Carmelo Anthony because of the style of play he plays, Max, and because of what he can do on the basketball court and what LeBron's presence will take away from him from a culpability and responsibility standpoint, thereby allowing Carmelo Anthony to actually play even longer, I definitely think it was something they should have strongly considered. And I think it was a mistake by Cleveland Cavaliers brass to not bring Carmelo on board with LeBron.
They were absolutely right in turning down the idea of this trade. Maybe what you're saying would be right, maybe, and I don't even know if that's true then, but if it was the offseason and you had all year to integrate a piece as large as Carmelo Anthony into the fabric of the team. Look, Golden State had some issues integrating Kevin Durant into their team because a piece that large, even if it's only one, an offensive player that significant, changes the offensive dynamic of the team. And Carmelo Anthony is not on the same planet as Kevin Durant offensively. Yeah, I said it, Stephen A. Carmelo Anthony
you're smoking something.
Carmelo Anthony's a great ISO scorer, but ISO scorer is not offense. It's a part of offense. As an ISO scorer, Carmelo's as good as just about anyone who's ever lived at the position. But as an overall offensive player, Kevin Durant is on a completely different level than Carmelo Anthony, and Durant plays defense. And they won 73 games last year, and it's been difficult for them. You want to take away a shooter in Kevin Love and a guy who can pass the ball and shoot the ball Even if you think Carmelo is better than Kevin Love, and you can argue that, maybe win that argument, even if you wanted to do that, his skills, the fact that he can get his own shot on a team with two guys who play as many minutes as LeBron and Kyrie do and can also get their own shots is not what's most important. And then even if it was, the idea that halfway through the season, you then integrate that piece and that gives you a better chance to win over a guy who's been there for a couple of years, I think is ridiculous. They were smart to turn down this deal.
Well, first of all, a couple of things. Number one, the first go-round, Kevin Love was hurt. Vast majority of the latter part of the season and throughout, actually the first round of the playoffs against Boston that year, he was going for the playoffs. So in terms of winning or going to the finals or whatever, he had nothing to do with that the first go-round. Last year, I think that he was criticized and vilified unnecessarily so because even though he wasn't effective offensively, he did a lot of other good things. So I'm certainly, again, I'm glad you brought that up about Kevin Love because I'm not trying to cast any aspersions on him whatsoever. But let's analyze his game for a second, and we're talking a game of basketball here. You're looking at a guy like a Kevin Love when he was in Minnesota. Yes, he could step out and pull out for the three, but he was also bigger, bulkier, and was more of a presence down low for the Minnesota Timberwolves when he was there. He was a rebounding machine, not to mention the fact that he could score in the post. That's not the role that he plays with Cleveland, primarily due to the presence of a Tristan Thompson down low, how much room he takes up in terms of what he does defensively and his activity on the offensive boards, not to mention the fact that LeBron does what he does inside and out. When you look at a Carmelo Anthony, I wasn't comparing him to Kevin Durant, but since you want to bring it up, let's be clear. I think that Kevin Durant is one of the top two players in the world. I think one can make the argument that he could close better than almost anybody. I think that he could go down ultimately as the greatest scorer in NBA history outside of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And I'm not even willing to rule out that he could catch Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's that lethal as an offensive force and obviously efficient. But let's not sit up there and poo-poo the greatness of Carmelo Anthony as a basketball player on the offensive side of the ball. You can sit there and highlight ISO all you want to. ISO, non-ISO. The dude can score spot up. He can score off the dribble. He can shoot mid-range. He can step out to the three-point line. He can hit free throws. He can post up. That's what I'm talking about.
In other words, he's a huge offensive piece. He's a huge offensive piece, right?
Yeah,
because the kind of thing you can bring on into a team if you're trying to win a championship that year in the middle of the season, you need a defensive stopper, fine, a three-point shooter, fine, a backup point guard, fine. You want to integrate a huge offensive piece into a team trying to win a championship?
Let me finish my point. My point to you is that when you talk about fitting him in, the key element in all of that I explained, Max, is that when things break down, you can give him the ball and he can sit up there and do something for you. And when you take into account the fact that you're talking about Kyrie on the floor, sometimes things do break down. But when they break down, Kyrie has the skills to close anyway. So a Carmelo has the skills to close. If you are Kevin Love, that's not your game. So when things break down and Kyrie is not on the floor, it's more difficult for you to offset that breakdown because of how limited Kevin Love is. Even though he's gifted, his game is structured in such a way, and LeBron is not a shooter.
That's why LeBron wants a backup point guard. How many minutes are we really talking about when either Kyrie or LeBron, because you have two guys who can, when things break down, do what they need to do, as well as anyone in the game. You need three guys to do that? No, you need a backup point guard to fill in some minutes.
Wait a minute. You might need three guys for Golden State. You're right if we're just talking about a regular season. You're right if we're just talking about a playoffs. Because with or without the team that's presently constructed, we all believe that Cleveland's going to the finals. What we're talking about here is who you're trying to beat. Let's not, like, once again, here's our argument. Because this is you ignoring everything, you know, leading up to June because you're looking so forward to June. See, this is what you got to make up your mind. Because
you're the
I'm
one
looking
who said that June is foregone conclusion.
But what I'm saying, no, I said June meaning Golden State and Cleveland.
Yes.
I'm telling you, you've been saying, I can't wait, and I love this ride to the finals because it's beautiful, and then look what's going to happen in June. Well, now that I'm looking forward to June, you telling me to look at everything else. I'm like, hell no. I'm not looking at everything else. I'm looking at June. I'm looking at Golden State in June.
Sure.
I'm looking at what it's going to take to beat them. And I ask a simple question to you, Max Kellerman. I'll come right back at you with this.
Yep.
Kyrie, Love, LeBron going up against Golden State, or Kyrie, LeBron, and Melo. Who you rolling with?
How long have they been playing together? Half a season or 2 seasons? Yeah, that's a big deal.
Okay, all right. That's a big deal to you. I'm saying to you, it's not a big deal to me. I get that. I understand that. It's not a big deal to me because of what I'm talking about offensively. It might be a big deal to me in terms of defensive adjustments and things of that nature. I get that. You're right there. I'm talking strictly offense. I'm talking to the Max Kellerman that knows what basketball is on West 4th Street, know what basketball is at Rutgers Park, knows what basketball is at Madison Square Garden or Madison Square Garden or Madison Square Garden or anywhere else. I'm saying if you had to have a three-headed monster to go up against Golden State, would it be Love, Kyrie, and LeBron or LeBron, Melo, and Kyrie? Who you rolling with?
That is a tough question. I might lean toward Melo, maybe depending on what else is on the roster. You overrate Carmelo. He's not as good as you think he is.
Offensively?
Yeah,
I'm overrating him offensively?
Oh, we haven't even gotten into the defense. He don't play any defense at all.
I'm not talking about his
game.
defense. Well, listen, I know it's half the game, which I've said on many occasions, but I also understand the significance of LeBron. The combination of LeBron with a Tristan Thompson, the way JR played defense last year, the way Iman Shumpert is capable of playing defense. You can offset what Melo doesn't give you when you have a LeBron. That makes up for a lot. You can't offset what he brings offensively. You can't do that.
And so the problem is that Cleveland doesn't have enough offense in their starting lineup now? Is that the problem?
Excuse me, against Golden State. Do you believe they do?
I don't think Cleveland's good enough to beat Golden State with or without Carmelo or Kevin Love.
And I believe that if Melo, LeBron, and Kyrie are on the floor together, I want to see that matchup.
Had they been on the floor together all season, maybe. You bring them in halfway through the season, they will get beaten worse than had you not brought them in.
We got more to get into.
It's not as complicated as you think. It's not as complicated as you think. All right, go ahead, Molly.
Let's leave it there. We got more to get into with the Cavs. So we know LeBron was not pleased earlier this week, expressing how his team is not equipped to repeat as the roster stands. So the Cavs dropped another one last night to the Kings. Cleveland has now lost 6 of their past 8 games after starting the season 28-8. The last time LeBron James lost 6 of 8 games that he played in was March of 2011. And new this morning, multiple sources tell ESPN.com that tension between LeBron and the Cavs leadership is centered around payroll spending. Stephen A., where does this leave Cleveland?
Well, it leaves David Griffin having the unenviable task of having to go out there and get requisite second-tier pieces to satisfy LeBron James. Because even though they had a discussion, even though LeBron James is a professional personified, and he's going to go out there and do his job, there's something to be said about stepping out on the basketball court and legitimately believing you can beat the team you're going up against. With all of this bantering, with all of this chirping going around, it's clear that LeBron has serious questions about whether or not this team is equipped to compete with Golden State and San Antonio. That's why you've got this argument. This is what LeBron is playing for. LeBron ain't worried about everything else. LeBron's worried about June because that's what LeBron plays for. And he's looking at this roster right now, and he's saying what he's saying, which is why David Griffin and others had to have a conversation with them, because they're pointing out that how you're publicizing your lack of belief in your teammates. Now, LeBron might view it differently. He might not have interpreted it as such. He might think that the Cleveland Cavaliers are dragging their feet because they were prone to do that in years past, which also led to him departing for South Beach to begin with. Let's not forget that. But in the end, what this comes down to is all in the hands of David Griffin. J.R. Smith's got to get healthy. I love the Kyle Korver acquisition. David Griffin is the same guy that got Timothy Mozgov, that got a guy like Iman Shumpert and the J.R. Smith. And, you know, he signed Kevin Love or whatever, got Kevin Love after he acquired LeBron James, got Kevin Love from Minnesota. Let's give the man some credit and the belief that he could get it done, but let's also recognize he's going to have to get it done. And by the way, Max Kellerman, you brought up the fact that this is mid-season stuff and all of that stuff. I would remind you that Clyde Drexler went to Houston in mid-season when they won a title. I would remind you that Mark Aguirre went to Detroit in mid-season when they won a title. This is not the only time in history that a champion ended up making a mid-season acquisition prior to the championship and still ended up winning the crown, just so you know.
That's true. It's happened before. Carmelo Anthony on that team as an offensive option might be, if not the primary, the secondary offensive option. As an offensive option, we've seen him and LeBron play together in the past in the Olympics, and LeBron and others love using Carmelo as a primary offensive option. I think that's actually a bigger piece than Clyde Drexler or Aguirre or others who joined those championship teams. But okay, we will debate that going forward, I'm sure. as it relates to where this leaves the Cavs, leaves them on top of the East. I mean, look, do people really think that if LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers finish second or third in the East, they're not going to make the finals? Who's going to knock them out exactly? Who's it going to be, the Celtics or who are we, Toronto? Someone's going to knock the Cavs out of the East in the playoffs? LeBron James with a squad, they're going to get knocked out? No. No one believes that. Not a single person that I've seen or read is arguing that. And your own brain won't accept that. Of course the Cavs are going to make the finals, even if they don't finish first in the East. So where does that leave them? While they're looking for a backup point guard, which LeBron has said, and I mentioned this when the Korver trade first went down, they really need a backup point guard. A Dellavedova type shouldn't be that hard to figure out how to acquire by the deadline, but we'll see. While they're doing that, you know what I would suggest? Rest LeBron for like a week or two, and then rest Kyrie for like a week or two. Because you don't have to worry about the East if you're the Cavs. And now I know players and coaches on the Cavs, we have to worry. That's why yeah, you do. I'm saying all the Cavs fans and the rest of the world, we already know that LeBron and company will take care of business in the Eastern Conference and wind up in the finals. So as you said, Stephen A., since all LeBron is thinking about is that chip, give yourself the best chance to win it. And absent some blockbuster trade, the likes of which you're discussing, or for some great backup point guard, you got to rest your guys. That's LeBron. That's Kyrie. Don't sweat it. The East ain't got nothing for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
They don't have anything for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And your point would be relevant if LeBron James was alluding to anybody in the East. He clearly is not. He clearly is concerned about two teams. He's concerned about the Warriors or he's concerned about the Spurs. Everybody and their grandmother knows one of the two is coming out of the West. You're going to have to face them. What are you going to do about it?
Are we conceding that it might be the Spurs now coming out of the West?
No, we're not conceding that at all. We're just saying that you have to respect them enough because they're there. They're present. They find a way to win. Whether Kawhi Leonard is playing or not, whether LaMarcus Aldridge is playing or not, whether Tony Parker is playing or not. Somehow, some way, Greg Popovich seems to come up with ways to beat everybody.
That was a hell of a game
them.
last Saturday night when they beat Cleveland.
That's right.
On the road, and Kawhi went crazy.
And he dropped 40 for the first time in his career. But
Playing defense.
What I'm saying to you is that San Antonio has always has given LeBron James teams trouble because Greg Popovich knows how to coach against LeBron. And if there is a defender in the NBA, the Joe Dumars to a Michael Jordan per se, that you would want for LeBron, would it not be Kawhi Leonard defending LeBron?
Lied, yeah.
Of course, that's the case. And so because of that, you have to pay attention to it. LeBron James is paying attention to the boys out west and saying, what can we do to beat them? Because here's the thing. I don't believe LeBron wants to go to a finals again. If it's a loss, he'd rather lose earlier.
Well, look,
why go to the finals? Why even bother? It's all about winning the chip.
When Golden State acquired Kevin Durant, I think that was already, you looked at the Cavs, and it took every single thing they had to barely overcome Golden State, who couldn't buy a point in the last 4 or 5 minutes of that Game 7 at home, to barely squeak by them, and Golden State was up 3-1 at one point in that series. Once they had Kevin Durant, hey, LeBron and company, guess what? You know, we don't believe you. You need more people.
Well,
that was true since the Durant trade.
You're right, and I definitely appreciate those lines, no doubt. But here's the deal. It goes back to David Griffin for this other reason. David Griffin is caught in the middle between a beef between LeBron James and Dan Gilbert. Okay, that much is obvious. But here's where David Griffin's profile elevates and really elevates him into the picture. He has not been shy about essentially having the attitude, look, damn it, do your job and I'll do mine. That's been his attitude, and he's been relatively defiant. One has to surmise he has the authority to be that way because it's given to him by Dan Gilbert. Understand that. Understand that Tyronn Lue was always David Griffin's choice. It was Dan Gilbert who insisted that David Blatt be the coach that first go-round. That wasn't David Griffin. David Griffin always wanted Tyronn Lue, so now that he's in the position where he's going back and forth publicly with LeBron, he's going to have to make a move.
Stephen A., we got to leave it on that note. And if you like that discussion, you do not want to miss a huge one coming up later in the show. Can't wait for this. If you could have one guy to close out a game You taking LeBron or KD? Go on Twitter now. Cast your vote. We'll share those results a little later in the show. Coming up, speaking of decisions, they are about to play in their 7th Super Bowl together with a chance at their 5th title. But if you could only have Tom Brady or Bill Belichick, which one would you take? Don't miss that. And stay tuned because T.I. is going to join the show. Huge Falcons fan. He will explain why Atlanta will bring home their first Lombardi.
Hey, this is Shaquille O'Neal, the one who taught Stephen A. Smith everything he knows. And you're watching First Take. Hi, Molly.